And welcome back in to Tapped Out here on the BetQL network. Joining us now, Anthony Lionheart Smith. I don't know, do you prefer the alternate or the backup, or what's the right way to call what you are for this fight?
Yeah, I don't know. I think either works, to be honest with you.
All right, well, we'll call him the alternate right now for the Glover Teixeira and Jamal Hill fight. Is that a no-brainer when they ask you to do that, or is that something that you have to think long and hard about because there's a chance that you might not actually get an octagon?
Yeah, I thought I did have to think about it a little bit just because I'm in training camp anyways for a fight in March. So I didn't know how badly I wanted to kind of mess up my schedule by coming here for a week and cutting weight one time already. But at the end of the day, it's an opportunity, and that's all I've ever asked for. So it's real tough for me to have to try to. It's too tough to turn down an opportunity for sure.
How have you been in this position before, Anthony? Like, how have you talked to people about this? And are you, like, when your boots on the ground there, are you trying to get intel of like how likely it is they make weight? How likely is it that the fight actually happens? Or are you trying to go in with it as I'm gonna fight and just that's how you go about it? Like, how do you go about this week?
No, man, I just showed up and did my normal fight week kind of schedule. It's nice. I got to come in a day later. I don't have any media really for the most part. There's no pictures. I didn't have to sign all the posters. It's pretty much easy street here. And honestly, I have almost the exact opposite feeling that I'm probably like I'm not gonna fight. And if something comes and happens, I'll deal with it and fight when I have to. I've been in this game a long time. I don't need a whole bunch of notice or don't need to be in any specific mental state. Like if something happens and they tell me that I got to fight, I'll go fight.
Anthony, overall, and BT and I were kind of talking about this before the show. How do you think the state of the UFC is overall? Like, we've had a lot of stuff go on, obviously, outside the octagon right now. There's technically not a light heavyweight champ. There's technically not a heavyweight champ. Like, overall, how do you think the promotion is?
I mean, I think there's peaks and valleys anywhere. I think not having a heavyweight champion is more exciting than when we had a heavyweight champion, if you want my honest opinion. I think not having a light heavyweight champion and kind of having that little bit of a mess where, they were fighting for the title. Yuri got hurt. It was vacated. Then they put two more guys in there. Then there's a draw. Then now they're fighting for it again. I think that it creates headlines. And I think anytime that a sport's making headlines, you're in a good place. Maybe all of them aren't necessarily the best headlines in the world, but people are talking about it. And I think we're in a weird time of the year too, where, we kind of ended the year with a bang with a lot of crazy shit going on. And I think we're just in a little bit of a lull as we get fired back into the new year.
Why do you think it's more exciting that we don't have a champ right now than when we did at heavyweight?
I mean, were you guys talking about the heavyweight division until last week?
I actually thought heavyweight was in a pretty cool spot. Like, there was a lot of young guys going. I get it. It sucked because we basically knew he was going to be on the shelf for the whole year.
Right.
Aspinall definitely getting hurt sucked last year because I thought that he was kind of cool and up and coming. But was it just because did you have insight that Francis wasn't going to come back and you were ready for it to move on? And now Jon's obviously back. That's huge. And we've been waiting for him to come back forever. But I'm just curious from your end, why do you feel like that just getting Jon back is just such a huge jolt?
No, it's because at the top of the division, they were just spinning their wheels. There was no Francis Ngannou. There was no Jon Jones. There's no Stipe Miocic. There was no Cyril Gane. And Derek Lewis has been losing. So there just wasn't a bunch of eyes. And don't get me wrong, I think the heavyweight division is super exciting right now. It's packed with talent. But as far as how many people were talking about it and how much shine it was getting currently, I'm not saying in general always, but I'm just, until last week, there wasn't a whole lot of things being spoken about the heavyweight division. And then, you have Curtis Blades, who I have a lot of respect for. And I think that dude's one of the scariest guys in the world, but he's not necessarily the most media friendly guy. So he's about the only one that, I don't know. He's about the only one that's on a hot streak right now. That's at least coming off of a win. That's got a decent name. So I think that it's good. I think that Francis moving on gives the division some finality. I think everybody knows what's happening now. I think there was a lot of things up in the air. We got Jon Jones is fighting. It's maybe he's not fighting Stipe like I think a lot of us hoped, but I think Cyril Gane's a fantastic number 2.
Talking with Anthony Lionheart Smith, Omaha's own Anthony Lionheart Smith, joining us here. I'm in Kansas City, so I got to give you a little Midwest shout
there
out
we go.
here on Tapped Out. You're one of the guys that has fought Jon Jones, gave Jon Jones a hell of a fight. When you were fighting him at the time during the fight, and obviously it was a unique set of circumstances, were you thinking, damn, this guy's always cracked up to be, he is the greatest of all time? Or were you thinking, he's beatable, he might not be what he once was, and at this point we're talking about that being a few years ago?
You're gonna break a lot of headlines here, but like, because people hate when I say this, but as soon as I was in there with him, I knew immediately that guy's beatable. I think I built him up in my head better than he actually is. And that's not me not saying he's good, because I'll say it over and over and over again. I think that Jon Jones is the greatest mixed martial artist of all time. But he's human, and he's beatable for sure.
Do you think Cyril Gane is the guy to beat him? Because obviously, when the odds come out, we'll see what they end up saying. But now that fight is official, how are you looking at that one?
I don't know what the odds makers are saying, but in my opinion, I think that Cyril Gane is the toughest matchup in the heavyweight division for Jon Jones, other than Curtis Blaydes. I think those are the 2 tougher matchups for him in the division. I think that Curtis Blaydes is a little bit of I don't want to say easier, but Curtis, you don't have the option to wrestle with Curtis like Jon does with everybody else in the division. I think Curtis Blaydes will out wrestle Jon Jones. He's bigger, stronger, probably equally as fast. I think Jon's a better striker and is a little bit longer than Curtis Blaydes, so I think that will give Curtis some problems just trying to get to Jon on the outside. You can mark my words that Cyril Gane will have no problems getting to Jon Jones from the outside. I think that he fights the same style that Jon Jones fights, and I think that he does it better than Jon does. And he's been carrying 260 or 270 pounds for most of his adult life. Jon's been doing it for a couple years now. Cyril knows exactly where his range is. He knows exactly how long it's going to take him to get to certain places and how long it's going to take him to get out of certain places. Jon is still figuring that out with his new body. So I think that the striking, in my opinion, significantly favors Cyril Gane. Now, can Cyril Gane defend a takedown and keep his ass and back off the cage? I think that's the biggest question. I think Jon's gonna have to mix it up. He's gonna have to be a well-rounded mixed martial artist, and to do that, he needs to be able to wrestle Cyril Gane and slow him down a little bit and get on the inside. I would suspect that Cyril's going to be working on that. And I know that people are going to bring up that Francis Ngannou was able to take him down and win some of those grappling exchanges. But I will offer that I don't think anybody expected Francis Ngannou to wrestle. So I would suspect that Cyril Gane probably spent almost 0 time wrestling and grappling leading up to that fight. So I think there's some surprise factor there. Knowing that Jon Jones has a great wrestling game and can close the distance and push up against the fence and really slow you down there, and that being a focus for Cyril, I think you'll see a different guy in some of those exchanges.
And between guys that you either spar with or train with, what is the big difference from light heavyweight to heavyweight? You're a big dude. I mean, like when you're mixing it up with guys who have that 265-pound limit, how stark is the difference when you're moving with guys like that? Is there an advantage because you've moved with quicker guys? What is the big difference there?
It depends on what kind of heavyweight you're talking about. You know, if you take the guys that are ranked, and without those names in front of me, I would just take a guess and say you take 7 through the rest of the guys, maybe 10. The top 10 and below are just big ass light heavyweights. So to me, in my opinion, there really is no difference. And then you look at the guys at the top. Your Curtis Blaydes, Tai Tuivasa, Derek Lewis, Cyril Gane, Francis Ngannou. Other than Stipe, there's no way that those guys could ever make 205 pounds, and they are massive, massive men. If you go back and look at the face-off with Cyril Gane and Francis Ngannou, when they came together in the octagon, Francis Ngannou is significantly smaller than Cyril Gane. Like, and that guy is fast. He can move like that for 5 rounds. I think that's the difference in elite level heavyweights. Of course, you have the power difference. They're going to just carry heavy power in their hands and kicks. They're going to be tougher takedown, less about their takedown defense, but more about the power in their hips. I think that's where Jon's going to probably find the biggest difference. It's not going to be so much getting to the takedown. It's going to be what it feels like when those guys really hip into you and get their hips out of the way. I think that's probably the biggest difference that I noticed is kind of in the clinch situations. They're just so strong.
You mentioned Ngannou. Now that we're a few days removed from all that news, are you surprised now that maybe it's soaked in a little bit? Like, are you surprised? Like, Francis Ngannou is not the UFC anymore. That's kind of crazy.
I'm not really surprised. I thought that if he was going to sign, he would have done it already. I think he waited him out and he's still getting healthy. So it's not like he's kind of in a good spot for him. He wasn't going to fight anyways because he's been banged up and he's still recovering from an injury. So he can almost just keep waiting out his contract and waiting out the negotiations while he's still healing. It's not like he could have been back anyways. So to be honest, I'm not that surprised.
Talking to Anthony Smith, you guys can get ESPN UFC 283 on ESPN Plus pay-per-view. Anthony also does a fantastic job as an analyst on ESPN as well. So can you give us some insight into this? You train with Jamal Hill? Like that's a strange thing, man. Like you guys could potentially fight in some kind of freak scenario, but you wanted to get some work within it. Why did you do that? Because
he asked me. He honestly just was a man about it and picked up the phone and asked for my help. And I respected that. I respected that for him to call a potential likely future opponent and say, listen, man, you fought this guy, you felt him, you know the intricacies of his game, you've already done a training camp for him, your jiu-jitsu and wrestling is better than mine, and that's where I would potentially have some problems in this fight, and I want your help. He flew me out, he put me in a dope-ass hotel, gave me a car to drive, took me out to some really nice dinners, and we trained our asses off. I've been hanging out with him all week here. So oddly enough, I am the alternate, but you know, like if something happens, I could be fighting him tomorrow, you know, like who knows, but, I think he's like me, man. I'm an old school guy. So I've trained with guys that I've ended up fighting before. I came from a wrestling background where you spend the entire off season at camps and at all these different places that you're wrestling, and you're wrestling with guys that you're going to end up competing against at some point in time. So I just check it. I'm a different guy every couple months, every 6 months. I have a different game. I have different wrinkles. I get rid of stuff. I add new stuff. So he's very similar. So we weren't in there analyzing each other. I was there. Honestly, we weren't in there fighting. We weren't in there sparring hard rounds. It was really me just shoring up some of those holes and giving him my insight from my experience with Glover and then trying to work through some of those solutions.
Anthony, I mentioned our Midwest connection, me, a Kansas City guy, you training out of Omaha. I'm actually like 20 minutes away from Glory. So tell me if I'm going down a road that I shouldn't. But just out of curiosity, have you talked to James Krause since all this crap's gone down at all? Any sort of connection?
No, I haven't, man. I think that he's I think he's just kind of withdrawn a little bit, which I'm not surprised. I probably would too.
Sure.
Yeah, no, I haven't. A couple of the Glory guys, I've been doing my training camps, obviously in Denver. So a lot of those Glory guys came to Factory X, and I've been in training camp. So I did run into a handful of James's old guys that had to find new homes. Some of his orphans.
How hard do you think that's going to be for somebody like Brandon? I mean, he's taking on a very familiar opponent, but found something that you like as a fighter. When you find something that's comfortable to you and works, like, do you think that's going to be tough for him, or with the experience that he's had, the opponent with the experience that he's had, he should be okay?
That's a good question. It could go a couple different ways. There's always growing pains when you train with a new coach, right? So there's always a familiarity lapse that you got to get close. So I don't know. When I went to Factory X in 2017, I fought Andrew Sanchez, and I went there right at the beginning of that training camp. And we go back and you look at that performance, you can kind of see an internal battle where I got all my old shit, and I'm trying to mix in all this new stuff that I've learned. But some of that stuff butts heads with each other. So you have, like, you're fighting with yourself. Like, here's the old me, here's the new stuff that I'm learning, and this is the stuff that I like. But like, we haven't quite meshed them together yet. We haven't got them to come together in a productive way. That's a possibility that can happen with Brandon. So the good thing is he was already pretty good anyways. So worst case, as long as he's in shape and his head is in the right place, if things start getting weird and he's mixing his old shit with his new shit, you can always just go back to the old stuff that worked before and just check all the new stuff, and we'll worry about that stuff later. We'll figure out how to implement that stuff into my game. Yeah, who knows? He may be too far down that road where stuff's already a little bit confusing. So I suspect he'll be okay. I'm a big fan of Fortis MMA and Safe specifically. Although Ryan Spann and I don't necessarily see eye to eye on too many things. I have no problem saying that he has a fantastic gym there. They got a fantastic group of guys. I think he's doing a great job with Ryan. I think he's done a great job with Kennedy and Zetriku, and Alex Morono, and he knows what the hell he's doing. And if you ever watch any of his analysis shows or his breakdowns, he's deep in the weeds and in the details. So I think it's a possibility that just a fresh set of eyes and a fresh outlook on this fight. You get someone from the outside that hasn't already done this 3 times before. It could just be what Brandon needs.
Lionheart Smith joining us here on Tapped Out. We'll get you out of here with this one. This is totally selfish of me because I've been wondering this forever. So now that I got you here, I got to ask you, when you're fighting Jon and you essentially have a chance to, I guess we'll call it pulling out Joe, right? Like pulling out Jermaine Sterling and end up just saying, I'm done. Your head's rattled, obviously. You're fighting the greatest of all time, so you're not thinking completely straight. What are you thinking at the time? Like, are you actually going through this? Okay, well, it would be kind of pussy of me to do this, but then again, I could have the belt and I could be the guy that beat Jon. What are you actually thinking when that's going
on? I never even considered that if I didn't continue that I would have won. That never even crossed my mind. Like, not fighting never even crossed my mind. I don't know if you allow cursing on the show, but I do remember.
Sure.
The second he hit me with the knee and then the refs separated us, I remember thinking, like, you fucking douchebag. Like, it's always something. Like, it's always something. Like, motherfucker. Like, you just can't do it clean. You know what I mean? Like, you just can't keep it clean. That's really what was going through my head. I just remember thinking, you fucking douchebag. It's just, and that's kind of Jon Jones. You know what I mean? Like, for better or for worse, Jon and I have a weird relationship, you know, like we banter at each other back and forth, but I've always been willing to give him his props. And to be fair, you can search and you'll never find anything about anything Jon's ever said about my fighting game or my style or my toughness that's negative. Maybe we don't see eye to eye in life, but we have a respect for our games and what we bring to the table as competitors. But yeah, I just thought he was such a douchebag. You know, like, it's always something with Jon Jones, and that's kind of what was going through my head. Like, nothing's ever easy. It's never smooth. Like, you can't even beat me and it have some sort of controversy, you know, like it just courses through his veins, you know? So, yeah, I never considered it. I never thought that maybe I won't continue, but that's not my personality. It had nothing to do with the knee. It had nothing to do with anything else. I would have to say it out loud that I can't do it. And that's one thing that I'm not willing to do. It doesn't matter what it is. You could put me in there with Francis Ngannou, Derek Lewis, and Cyril Gane at the same time, and I would have to fight them because I wouldn't be able to say I can't do it. So that's just my personality. Even maybe sometimes it's a fault. You know, I put myself in situations sometimes that maybe isn't necessarily always the best. I've never pulled out of a fight, and a lot of times I probably should have, but I just can't. I can't say those words, and I just can't bring myself to do it.
For the record, you're not the only one that thinks Jon's a D-bag. My girlfriend, I used to have this up in my bedroom, and she was like, take that thing down, man. So I did. I had to put that thing on the living room. So you're not alone there. Anthony Smith, exactly what I expected, man. Just awesome stuff, dude. If you fight, if you don't fight, good luck. Stay healthy. Hope you get a shot at the belt next, man. Big fans of you here. Thanks so much, man.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, guys. I appreciate you. Thank you.